me ask you this. I think a lot of people are putting pressure on you to make promises that you can't keep. It's my understanding that the governor of the state of Texas does not write the laws.
That's correct.
The Senate and the House make the laws. You can either accept or veto, and you can sort of push them in the right direction. But you can't make those guarantees and expect to keep them. It's just no way.
Hence my challenge to you to give us a house that will get rid of property tax in Texas. We've got to have that bill. We've heard anecdotally out of Austin that the governor's not provided that leadership. You do need to use that bully pulpit and set the tone for the direction that the legislative session goes. But ultimately, you're absolutely right. You got a set of representatives and you got a speaker and you got a Senate and a lieutenant governor, and they are all independent-minded, strong-willed individuals. So I'll have my work cut out for me. But I've been in that corporate environment. Every corporation that works well, and believe you me, hospitals are big businesses. Lots of departments and lots of egos. You think physicians don't have egos? I'll visit with you a little bit about how nursing staff has to work with doctors, and I bet I'm gonna draw on those skills a lot when I work with state representatives and senators. Yes, sir.
There's several people here that's interested in hearing you state your stand on the
Okay. I had a lot of questions about whether or not I'm a gun control nut, because I talk about restoring. People say she doesn't have a concealed handgun permit. She must therefore be against guns. And I really don't believe the government has any. I don't know, something about shall not be infringed that we seem to not be able to understand. I think that we've had a lot of diversions in Austin. We've been diverted in our discussion of property ownership. We've got eminent domain problems. We've got property tax debates and discussions that don't do anything to restore. And I think that open carry discussion around guns in the last session was another diversion. Understand first that it is the people's right at the state level to limit gun ownership. I will give you that. I will give you that the state can say, certain kinds of criminal behavior, we're not going to allow those individuals. They've given up their right to keep and bear arms. But for the other 99% of the population, we ought not have to be jumping through hoops to keep and bear arms. And I began to think that gun registration was an unnecessary evil. My concern was that law enforcement was going to say we have to have it to solve crimes, but my thinking was probably that it was never used very effectively to solve a crime. And I had a conversation with Sheriff. I'd been talking about eliminating gun registration for a while, and Sheriff Mack and I toured recently, and I said, Mack, am I going to be okay with the law enforcement community on that? I believe we've got to get rid of gun registration. I don't think it has any place in a free society. And he said, Debra, you can say this. Gun registration's been used for one thing and one thing only throughout history, and that's gun confiscation. Amen. You get rid of gun registration, and I had been, if you go back to just after the Fort Hood shooting, I wrote a piece because I felt like our leadership was reacting. You said double-minded. They were reacting in a wrong way to that Fort Hood shooting. Fort Hood should have reinforced this truth. There's no amount of police protection. There is no amount of military presence that can keep us safe from one deranged individual intent on doing harm. It didn't happen in Columbine. It didn't happen in Virginia Tech. It didn't happen in 9/11. It didn't happen in Luby's right here in Texas. If we want a safe society, you first, as an individual, have the right to protect your life and your property. You want to be safe, buy a gun, learn to use it, keep it with you. Get rid of gun registration in Texas and encourage people to buy, own, and use guns when they're necessary.
One good last one. You talked about in talking about nullification injunction against the IRS.
And,
My biggest problem is the IRS end of it. I understand we can nullify anything that's not in the Constitution. IRS is in the Constitution, and we can't nullify that. Now, wait a minute. Now, if you get the Attorney General to file an injunction, then the IRS is still going to collect the tax. So do we not pay the tax? I don't understand how that's going to work.
I don't know how many of you realize that that federal health care bill, one of the components of that new bill, says that once the bill is signed, all of us will be required to have an acceptable health insurance policy. And for those who do not have the policy, for each month or portion thereof that you do not have the policy, you will pay a new penalty on your income tax return. So what I have advocated is that the Texas Attorney General will seek an injunction against the IRS to prevent the collection of that additional penalty until such time as the constitutionality of that bill is litigated. That gives you, the taxpayer, protects you from the taking of the fee or any penalty associated with you failing to pay it until such time as the bill's constitutionality is determined. Some of you will opt to pay it and take your chances that when we win the battle on the constitutionality, you'll get that money back. And others of you will stick the money away and bank it until such time as if we lose that battle, you'll owe the tax. We'll have a lot of public education to do to make sure that people aren't incurring this huge liability for some years of not.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, my intention was to address just the matter of the new taxing coming with this bill to protect the citizens of Texas from that additional reach by the IRS on what most of us would believe to be an unconstitutional federal action. Okay?
That is what is known as interposition, correct? Now, when Nancy and I started, thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
I know you've got people to talk to on radio stations all around the state. That's funny. I've never met a woman who talked any more than my wife. So one of the things that we had a twofold plan here, and I can relate to your story about being in the debate and having the
Can I just say one
process
more thing?
change.
That comment from the governor about he was the only one with any rural experience. Let me tell you, I'll milk a cow, skin a rabbit, butcher a chicken, slaughter a hog. I'd go up against you any day, castrate a pig or a steer, you know. My family called and said, "What was that?" He clearly doesn't know that Parker girl from South Texas.
Now let's deal with the second portion of the program. I know some of you got to go, and I appreciate that, but I want you to consider for just a minute the fact that what you heard tonight is only effective if she's elected governor. You heard an individual standing up here promise you that she would interpose her office, herself, for your defense. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I have never heard a public official, prospect, or a public official say that they would do that for me and my family and my property before. So I want to say this. If this is going to happen, and we're going to enjoy the prosperity that she knows and has explained to us, we've got to get her elected.